Creatine has been shown to boost cognition and to prevent mental fatigue. Creatine is one of the most effective cognitive enhancers available. This non-essential amino acid is synthesized in the liver, the kidneys, and the pancreas, and it's used in the brain to recharge the adenosine triphosphate that's produced by the mitochondria in your brain cells. Creatine is stored in your body as phosphocreatine. When ATP is used as an energy source in your neurons, it loses a phosphate molecule, turning it into adenosine diphosphate. Creatine steps in and it offers adenosine diphosphate another phosphate molecule, turning it back into adenosine triphosphate, or ATP, to be used again to fuel the brain cells. Creatine essentially recharges the fuel cells in your neurons. Creatine is critical for mental energy, neurotransmitters, as a neuroprotectant, and as an antioxidant. Creatine can reduce mental fatigue. It can recharge the ATP, which is the fuel source for your brain cells. The creatine recharges the ATP, which is directly involved in producing, packaging, and secreting neurotransmitters. So creatine boosts intelligence, improves memory, facilitates faster thinking, and improves mood. As creatine fuels the ATP and it boosts cellular metabolism, it helps to protect against neuronal damage from toxins, and this also improves cognition. Creatine is an amino acid and it's synthesized in your kidneys, liver, and pancreas. It's produced from the amino acids methionine, glycine, and arginine. You can also get creatine from eating wild game, red meat, eggs, and fish, or as a supplement. It's stored in your body as creatine phosphate, or phosphocreatine, and it's critical for creating adenosine triphosphate, which is synthesized in the mitochondria in your brain cells. ATP is the primary energy molecule used in your cells. The ATP is your body's natural fuel source. It's broken down to produce biochemical energy throughout your body, including in the brain cells. During this biochemical process, the ATP loses one of its phosphate molecules, and it's changed to adenosine diphosphate. This is where the creatine steps in. Remember, the creatine is stored in your body as creatine phosphate. It recharges the ADP by donating its phosphate molecule to the ADP, and this produces more ATP that can be used to make more energy. Without creatine to recharge the ATP, your brain cells are literally starved for energy. It's easy to get confused by the many forms of creatine that are available, and how to know which one works best for a nootropic effect. Creatine is one of the most well-studied and researched supplements in the world. Creatine monohydrate is the form used in most of the clinical studies. It's the gold standard of creatine, and it's been proven over decades of use. Buffered creatine is marketed as being able to outperform creatine monohydrate because of its higher pH level, but research does not back this up. Researchers in the Exercise and Sports Nutrition Lab at Texas A&M University conducted a double-blind study with 36 resistance-trained athletes. They tested creatine monohydrate against a buffered creatine, following the manufacturer's directions for loading and maintenance phase, and they ran the trial for 28 days. The research team concluded there was no evidence that supplementing with a buffered form of creatine resulted in fewer side effects, or that a buffered form was more efficacious and/or safer than creatine monohydrate. Creatine ethyl ester is another form of creatine, and it's supposed to convert back to usable creatine once in the body. It's marketed as having better absorption than creatine monohydrate. But the research shows it's actually less effective because once it's in your body, it's converted into an inactive form. The bottom line is don't overpay for fancy forms of creatine, no matter how good the marketing hype is. Creatine monohydrate is still the least expensive and the most effective form of creatine available. One study at the University of New Mexico investigated working memory ability, or the brain's ability to hold information for future use. Scientists studied children's brains, aged 7 through 12, using magnetic resonance spectroscopy, and they measured various brain neurochemicals. The study found that children with the highest levels of creatine in the brain had a better working memory, and they concluded, "We speculate that higher resting creatine levels may allow for greater in-task activation and facilitate processing." Another study published in Neuroscience Research examined the effects of supplemental creatine on mental fatigue. 24 healthy adults participated in a double-blind, placebo-controlled study. In the study, the adults who took 8 grams of creatine daily for 5 days showed significantly less mental fatigue while performing math than those who took no creatine. The research team said that creatine appeared to help increase oxygen utilization in the brain. ATP and creatine are critical to brain function. If you don't have adequate creatine to recharge ATP, your brain cells can't function at their best, and certain genetic disorders can interrupt brain creatine metabolism, causing significant neurological defects. A lack of ATP and creatine can affect neuron repair and the production and the transmission of neurotransmitters. If a creatine deficiency is caused by a genetic defect early in life, it can result in developmental delay, mental retardation, speech disabilities, and muscle weakness. Cognition, memory recall, reaction time, and mood can diminish. Brain cell membranes degenerate. Neurotransmitter levels decline. Mental health, language, and fine motor skills can decline. All of these changes in brain energy metabolism are contributing factors to neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, ALS, epilepsy, and dementia. But even if you're not concerned with genetic defects or the effects of aging, creatine can still help. Study after study shows creatine supplementation has a significant impact on working memory and intelligence, both tasks that require mental speed of processing. Creatine supplementation plays a major role in brain energy capacity and influencing brain performance. You may find it curious that researchers who study cognition and athletic performance seem to favor using vegetarians or vegans and giving them creatine supplements. They use the vegetarians as test subjects because creatine is only found in animal flesh and vegetarians don't eat meat. Creatine is not an essential amino acid because we can synthesize it from other amino acids, but amino acids found in plant foods are not synthesized very effectively. This is the reason why vegetarians have lower creatine levels in their body than those of us who eat meat. Our cells run on energy supplied by the ATP. We burn ATP energy when using our muscles, but we go through ATP faster when we use our brains. Consider that our brain only makes up about 1 to 3% of our body weight, but the billions of neurons in our brain use 20% of our body's total ATP-derived energy. ATP energy is used in your brain for neuronal repair and to produce, package, and secrete neurotransmitters. It's the power behind bioelectrical signals when neurons communicate with each other. During this neuronal activity, ATP loses one of its phosphate molecules and it's changed to ADP. The creatine is then needed to recharge the ADP by donating a phosphate molecule, so you can then use the ATP energy again. This is why every Nootropics user should have creatine as part of their diet. Once you start supplementing with creatine, you should experience improved cognitive function. Your thinking will be clearer and faster. Mental energy will get a boost, and you won't feel mentally wasted after an intense mental workout. Reading should be easier, and you won't find yourself rereading the last sentence again and again. Overall, you should feel a boost in both physical and cognitive abilities, and an improvement in your sense of well-being. Creatine was identified way back in 1832, and science has been researching it every possible way since then. Thousands of studies have been done on physical and brain health and how they relate to the creatine. A research team at the University of Sydney decided to test the effects of creatine supplementation in 45 young adult vegetarians. People who stick to a vegetarian diet are typically deficient in creatine, because red meat is the main source of this critical nutrient in the diet. In this double-blind, placebo-controlled trial, they gave some of the young adults 5 grams of creatine once a day for 6 weeks. Then they tested for intelligence and working memory performance. The researchers found that creatine supplementation had a significant positive effect on both working memory and intelligence. Both methods that they used to test the subjects required speed of processing. The research team concluded brain energy capacity has a profound role on the influence of brain performance, and that brain energy relies on creatine. Scientists at the University of Sunderland in the UK conducted a double-blind, placebo-controlled study working with 34 healthy men and women with a mean age of 21 years. None of the participants were vegetarian. One group took 5 grams of creatine daily for 2 weeks, and the other group took a placebo. They were tested before supplementation and then after 2 weeks of using their creatine or a placebo. The tests consisted of memory scanning, number pair matching, sustained attention and arrow flankers, followed by an IQ test. These tests were mentally strenuous by any standard. The researchers concluded those taking the creatine tested much better and showed less mental fatigue than the placebo group. The creatine increased attention span, IQ, and working memory. Drugs currently used to treat neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's provide temporary relief from the symptoms, but they don't stop the underlying cause of the disease. Scientists are now working on therapies that focus on replacing injured and dead brain cells and boosting growth factors along with other nootropic molecules. These new therapies include developing vaccines and using compounds like creatine to immunize against these life-threatening diseases. One thing that scientists know for sure is impaired energy metabolism plays a prominent role in many of these neurological diseases. Recent studies show impaired energy production in the brain causes neuron cell death. Optimal levels of ATP are crucial to maintaining healthy brain cells, and creatine is critical in maintaining cellular energy levels. Supplementing with creatine has been proven for its neuroprotection in a wide range of neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's, ALS, Alzheimer's, stroke, and epilepsy. A recommended dose of creatine is 5 grams per day. Studies show creatine should be consumed with carbohydrates for the best absorption. The myth that you should not take creatine with caffeine is exactly that, a myth. No reliable study has shown this to be true. Creatine is produced naturally in your body, so it's considered well tolerated and safe. But overconsumption of creatine can be hard on your kidneys and liver. These organs are creatine factories, and too much creatine can overwork them. If you're dealing with liver or kidney problems, you should talk to a doctor before supplementing with creatine. Pure creatine is the safest, but many commercially available creatine supplements contain contaminants. Check the labels carefully. Other side effects can include mild diarrhea, gas, upset stomach or stomach cramps, muscle cramps, increased urination, headaches, reduced appetite, and water weight gain, usually when using too much creatine, or during the loading phase of creatine supplementation. Because creatine causes an energy boost, many users avoid taking the creatine in the evening. Your body does make some creatine on its own, and from the food that you eat. But if you're a vegetarian, or you don't get enough quality creatine in your diet every day, you'll benefit from adding creatine to your diet. Creatine is critical for fueling the activity in your neurons needed for cognition, memory, critical thinking, decision-making, and more. Creatine is especially helpful if you're dealing with fatigue or putting unusually high demands on your brain, resulting in mental fatigue. Studies have shown creatine can help to prevent a host of neurodegenerative diseases. It suggested a dose of 5 grams per day. It takes a while for creatine to build up in your body, so if you like to get the benefits faster, load with 20 grams a day for a week, and then pull back to a maintenance dose of 5 grams per day. And creatine is a great complement to stack with any nootropic from the racetam family. Anything that causes an increase in the uptake of acetylcholine in your brain and an increase in mental processing. You need to provide your brain with the fuel that it demands, and creatine is a proven way to do this. For more information about herbs, supplements, and natural treatment plans, check out my website. And for similar information, check out my videos on mitochondrial boosting supplements like D-ribose.